The Flight Attendant on HBO was surprisingly worth the watch, or at least good for the first episode. This is only an episode 1 review, but I enjoyed it. It's somehow a murder mystery kind of a type, so if you're into that type of movie, you'll definitely enjoy at least the first episode. I haven't seen any of them, but for the first episode, it's really not my cup of tea as far as like murder mysteries. But for this one, I was like, all right, cool. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, as I'm going forward, I will be having spoilerish stuff that comes up, but you've been warned. So I was interested in this one because of the actress, or the lead actress, Kaylee Kuko, which I'm a huge fan. I used to love her in The Big Bang Theory, and I've watched some of her other movies, and I was just a fan, and I was like, hey, let me give this a shot. I didn't even know the show was out, and I was kind of just browsing through my HBO Max, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, let me give this a try, and I watched the first episode, and I was like, oh, okay. What really intrigued me, and this is a little side note, a little tangent, but when she was in The Big Bang Theory, she came out with an interview saying that she didn't really like how she was sexualized, right? Penny was dressed very provocative. She showed a lot of skin. I mean, Kaylee has a great body that she works really, really hard to maintain, physically, being fit and staying in shape. So she really has an attractive body, and she used to wear Daisy Dukes. She used to wear little small tops. Everything was really tight, and that's what brought a lot of the younger males in. The show, if you're not familiar with The Big Bang Theory, it's centered around a bunch of nerds, and there was these hot girls, 2 of them, that were around, attracted to the nerds, and that's what kind of had the appeal. At least for the episode 3, 4, and 5 seasons 3, 4, and 5 and on. Season 1 and 2 were basically like, oh, look at the nerds want the hot girl, but is he gonna get her? Is he not gonna get her? Kind of a thing. So when I saw the first episode, there's of the flight attendant, it's very sexualized, right? And I was like, wow, what an interesting choice for her to take, given the fact that in her interview she was really upset about the sexualization of her character Penny. But then at least in the first like 5 minutes of the flight attendant, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. But then obviously we get into the murder mystery part, and you're like, she probably just loved the role or the script, and this was just a little bit, but it wasn't really centered on the nudity, or not on the nudity, because there was no nudity on The Big Bang Theory, but it wasn't centered on her being overly sexualized. But with that being said, though, she is super promiscuous. She is basically a flight attendant that likes to, she's a flight attendant, right? So she goes all over the world, and she parties, and she has, sex with men that she meets in different countries, different states, different places. So she's basically taking, the cliche of flight attendants, because everyone really thinks that already about flight attendants, that they get to travel the world and they just have random sex with trailers, not with strangers, not only men, not only women, but also men. It's just part of the mystique, I guess, if you want to glorify it that way. But so she basically has a ton of sex, and parties and living her life. She's young. So basically, Cassandra is her name in the character, the one that Kaylee Kuko's playing. Cassandra Bowden, which I hate that last name, but or Bowden, however you pronounce it. But anyways, so for the review, we're gonna just call her Cassandra. So basically, that's a little just baseline on what Cassandra, or Kaylee Kuko's character, is basically on. And we find out really early on in this episode that she has a severe drinking problem, and glimpses of daddy issues. Now, the dad was there in her life, and in a couple of flashbacks, you see her dad give her beer, like probably when she's like 12 years old, and leads to her excessive drinking. She drinks to the point where she blacks out, which will come in later as far as what a plot device of her addiction, because she is truly addicted to alcohol. And I'm not 100% sure, but she is showing a ton of psychopathic traits. She's having these weird psychedelic flashbacks, but she's aware of these flashbacks. With those types of flashbacks in real life, have to deal with real life trauma, whether it be sexual assault, whether it be a unbalance in your damage to your head, just an unbalance in your body on how to make you have these psychosomatic events. And she basically goes back to the scene of the crime, which I'll get into now. So basically, in this first episode, like I said, she's a flight attendant. She flies over the world, and in this flight attendant, or in this flight, she finds a very handsome man, and they hit it off. They kiss. I think they're insinuating they only kiss, even though it seems like maybe they had, they joined the Mile High Club. Even though I'm pretty sure that Cassandra has joined the Mile High Club many times. They just make out in the restroom, but then it's insinuated that they stop, so they go back or she takes them back to her seat. And even the other flight attendants are insinuating, oh, like, did you guys hook up? You need to calm down. And she's like, mind your business. And as they land and he's onboarding the plane, he gives her his card, like, hey, call me. And the other flight attendant, oh, are you gonna hang out with her? And she goes, no, I'm not gonna hang out with them. But of course she does. So basically, she's about that party life. So she meets up with the party. She meets up with the guy, and he has like a Bugatti, or it was just a really expensive car, and he's very wealthy and rich. So we have a little montage of them partying it up, of them like having a great time, drinking, eating, just the whole 9 yards of for an date night, I guess. A woman's fantasy of what they wish every type of guy would be. So she wakes up from this amazing night, amazing sex, amazing everything, to find out that the man that spent the night is dead right next to her, and she can't remember anything because, again, she has a tendency to black out through that. And that's literally within the first 10 minutes. And then she does the unthinkable. She starts cleaning up the crime scene, and which leads to the investigation happening on this murder. And as she's a flight attendant, she's already like in New York, right? Because the flight attendants go from day to day, different days. You're already traveling. It's the one downfall to being a flight attendant, is that you're there for a couple of days and you leave to another place for a couple of days and a couple of days and a couple of days. You're always on the move. So within the 24 hours, she goes from, I think they were in India or Bangkok, and then they go to Thailand, and then they go to New York. So basically that's the flights in 24 hours, even though I don't know if that's possible in 24 hours, but maybe it is. If you're like one of these flyers, let me know in the comments. Is that possible to go from those 3 locations in a matter of 24 hours? But anyways, the investigation catches up with her, and that's the end of, I think it's like a surprise. Like there was, well, I won't spoil that part. Go ahead and watch the episode. So the investigation catches up with her, and it kind of leads to a little cliffhanger. But watch it and you'll understand the cliffhanger. So anyways, that's that kind of the base, a really brief rundown of what the plot in episode 1 is, and probably the plot throughout this whole rest of the season. But I don't know. Like I said, we're just doing it in episode 1. So what about the acting and everything going on as far as the actual acting of this miniseries? I thought the acting was superb. There is so many characters that you'll recognize, I guess. From them. I can't really. You've seen them in other movies, TV shows. There's Rosie Perez in here playing like her kind of best friend, but she's also like another flight attendant. But the acting from everyone was pretty convincing. They played well off of each other. Really great casting, to say the least. They have good representation if you care about that stuff. Multi-ethnic, multi-sexual. It's just, like I said, for the first episode, it left a really, really good impression about me. There's big locations. Obviously, they're traveling the world, so you expect to have filming in different exotic locations, have great shots, great cinematography, and this show does have it. It has a great international presence of itself, and it does it justice. It doesn't show like the slums. It puts every place that they've been. Again, we'll see going forward, but at least for episode 1, they put a really good step forward on these exotic locations that we're seeing throughout the world, and it sets us up for some good expectations. So I'm looking forward to watching the rest of these episodes. I don't know if I'm gonna do an episode by episode breakdown. This review of episode 1 was more saying, hey, you know what? I saw the first episode, and for me, it's worth the watch to continue. If I decide to do an episode by episode breakdown, I say breakdown review. You'll find out. I'll post them as episodes per episode, or I will probably, what most likely will happen is I will watch them all the way through and then just do a season review. But if you want something to watch, I think for episode 1, I think The Flight Attendant on HBO is definitely worth the watch. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And like always, that's a wrap.